يا رب إنك مقصودي ومعتمدي.
رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وفقهنا اذا جهلنا وزدنا علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا يا كريم. وبعد. We have about 45 minutes to cover the rules of fasting, which is not a lot of time. We're going to try and get through the main points on fasting. A lot of questions will come around the rules of fasting, so I'd ask if you make a note of your questions as we go along and leave them till the end, and then we'll take the question in the last 5 or 10 minutes. The first issue, we're just going to go through the key points around fasting. The first issue about fasting, point 1, fasting the month of Ramadan is a personal obligation. Personal obligation meaning that every single adult sane Muslim, every single adult Muslim, it's an obligation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's made a fard upon them to fast the blessed month. If you perform the fast, you receive great reward. If you fail to do the fast, the only one who suffers the consequence is yourself, nobody else. That's the meaning of a personal obligation. And in hadith, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, if a person was to miss one day of Ramadan without an excuse, even if he was to fast for eternity, it would not compensate. It would not compensate. One day, even if you fast for eternity, would not compensate. So it's a severe matter not to fast the month of Ramadan. So it's a personal obligation. All 29 or 30 days must be fasted. Only if there's a valid excuse so you're allowed to skip a fast. And even then, as we'll discuss, you're either going to have to make it up or you're going to have to make a payment in place of it. The details of which will come. The first issue, or the second issue here, the first of 2 controversial issues. We're going to speak about 2 controversial issues. The first one, who do we follow when we start fasting Ramadan? Saudi. You're from VP, wasn't you? You don't do Saudi. Who do you follow? There's a lot of discussion. Who do you follow?
Victoria published it.
There's a lot of discussion about that, a lot of arguments about that, a lot of heartache as well within families about this issue, although it's a relatively simple issue. And to solve this type of issue, it just needs a little bit of knowledge. It doesn't need much, and a little bit of humility, willingness to follow the Imam, Mujtahid Imams of this Ummah who are our source of guidance. So instead of considering all the opinions, we refer back to the orthodox madhabs, the orthodox schools. And within the orthodox schools, we find we have 2 opinions, 2 sound opinions, which is based upon the overriding hadith that speaks on this issue, where the Prophet ﷺ said, "Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi." Fast when the moon is sighted, and stop fasting, speaking more Eid, when it is sighted. That's the overriding hadith, and all of the discussion I was going to center on this hadith. Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi. We have 2 opinions. The Hanafi madhab, the strongest opinion, is what we call Ittihad al-Matana, which is global sighting. Global sighting. In the Hanafi madhab, anywhere in the world that the moon is sighted, not just a claim, a verified, certified sighting. It's not somebody comes to you and tells you, you've got family in Pakistan, for example, you get onto the phone to them and say, you've seen the moon. Nothing to do with him. It's got to be verified and certified. Anybody in a Muslim country sees the moon must go to the committee, the Hakim. Originally it was the Hakim. Now you go to committees. Must present your case, and it's either accepted or rejected based on a number of factors. One is the possibility sighting, the other is the individual, is he a reliable individual or not. If it's not accepted, nobody can fast. So it's not just based on a sighting, it must be verified and certified by ulama, by scholars as well as specialists in this area. Once we have a certified sighting, in the Hanafi madhab, everybody in the Ummah must fast. It's not regional. Everybody, because the Prophet when he says Sumu, Khitab Am, he addressed everybody. He did not say everybody within a particular region. He said everybody fast. That's all Muslims. This year, according to astronomical data, the first possible sighting is on Monday night. The first possible sighting is on Monday night. Any claimed sighting that comes before that is ignored. Rather than say that they lied, we say that they made a mistake. It's humanly impossible to sight the moon until after sunset, 17 hours after. 17 hours after. From the birth of the new moon until the first possible sighting, 17 hours. That's going to be Monday night, either in the Pacific Ocean with the naked eye, and in Southern America with optical aid, which is valid, like telescopes, it's valid to use that. That's the first possible sighting. So if which probably will happen, if an announcement comes on Monday night that such and such a country has sighted it, we need confirmation, possible regions, which is Southern America, particularly Southern America. If it's confirmed that Muslims are sighting, it's been verified, then we'll go with them. Anybody claims on the Sunday night that it's been sighted, it's impossible. And we're not required to follow people in their mistakes. We follow the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said fast when it is sighted. If people are making mistakes when it couldn't have been sighted, we say that's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't impose that upon us. The second opinion is regional sighting, localized areas. For example, in Pakistan, that's how it happens, and in other Muslim countries, it happens that way. If it's sighted within that country or that area, it will be announced, and the people within that area will fast. If it's not sighted within that area, even if it's sighted elsewhere, they will do full 30 days and they will wait an extra day. That's a valid way of doing it. So when some people are critical and say that Pakistan, for example, does it a day too late, they're working on a valid system. They're working valid. Sometimes there's other countries that are doing a day too early. Sometimes there's other countries that are making the mistakes, but because it's not been sighted in place and they're going regional, perfectly acceptable to do that. They're the two sound opinions. What we're not required to follow, or what's not a sound opinion, is fixing a particular location and saying that irrespective, I'm going to go with that place. Irrespective of right or wrong, I'm going with that place because I trust them, because of the centre of the ummah, whatever the reason you want to justify. There's no valid basis for that in Sharia. If somebody says, I will accept whatever comes out of Mecca, Medina, that's the only place I'm going to follow because that's the centre of the ummah. We say that you don't pray according to their times. You don't pray according to that. You're not required to pray according to their times. Likewise, you're not required to fast according to them. You're not required. Particularly if it's wrong. We follow the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam who said fast when it is sighted. And if it's been cited and it's verified, we'll go with it. Otherwise, we're not bound to one particular place. Nor the other common thing is back home. We'll go with back home. There's no hadith that supports the back home theory. Nothing supporting back home. Sumu li ru'yatihi. That's the overriding. Global sighting, regional sighting. Everything else, keep it out of the discussion. Global sighting, regional sighting, if they've been verified. The other one which unfortunately become widespread or become wider is calculations. Calculated sightings. In some countries like in Egypt, in Jordan, Muslims in America, Islam, for example, they won't even rely on sighting. They'll work out when it was possible for it to be sighted and we'll go with that. That's not an accepted opinion. Although it's become, and for some people they're going to say it makes sense to go with that. That's not an accepted opinion because the Prophet ﷺ based it on sighting. He said, Sumu li ru'yatihi. He said, when it is sighted, fast. So the expectation this time it's going to be Monday night, the first Taraweeh, and Tuesday will be the first day fast. But every year we look at on that principle, a global, anywhere in the world where it could have been sighted and it's verified and certified. Then the disputes that happen around that, because it's easy enough to say that, but you go home now and your family's following that mosque and your neighbour's following the other mosque and the mosque is following somewhere else and it gets all a bit messy. The important thing is not to engage in disputes on these matters. The important thing is not to get into arguments about these matters, because it's almost become a source of, it's almost become like a laughing joke at the Muslims that they can't even determine when. And the problem isn't, because Muslims unfortunately have regressed in their understanding, too simple-minded. What's the problem in having 2 different days? What's the problem? People say we should have unity. The Messenger ﷺ did not impose your version of unity. He allowed companions to fast in different, or to pray in different ways. So you're not required to impose one particular. The Messenger ﷺ never did that. Ikhtilaf ummati rahmah. The difference within this community is a blessing for this community, it's a mercy for this community. There's no need to impose your viewpoints on others. Allow for 2, when it gets 3-4 days, then we've got issues. Then it gets a bit. But 2 days is not a problem. And particularly, if for example now you've taken that Monday, but your family's going with a different mosque, and they're doing it on Tuesday, not a problem. Not a problem, because you can fast separate to them, and you're doing one day, and they start the next day, not a problem. Where it gets a problem is Eid. That's where you get a problem. Because Eid is not about individuals, it's about community. And at that point, sometimes you just need to back down, and just go along with it. Because even though you're convinced that it's not right, for the sake of unity within the family, within the community, maybe it's better just to back down on these. You don't need to be staunch on these matters, because اختلاف أمتي رحمة. The difference within my ummah is a source of mercy for my ummah. So that's the first controversial issue. The next controversial issue. There's only 2 of them, don't worry about it, otherwise we'll be here forever. Which we'll come on to within this definition. We've determined now when the fast starts, when it's cited anywhere in the world, which this time probably will be the Monday night. The definition of fasting involves 3 different aspects. Abstaining from food, drink and marital relations, that's point 1. That's the first part of the fast, and we'll discuss the details of that shortly. From Fajr to Maghrib, that's the second part. And the third, with intention. There are 3 parts that must be in place for a fast to be considered valid. We've got 3. 1 is abstaining. Second, the time. Third, niyyah, intention. The first one, abstaining from food and drink, we're going to come on to that. We're going to speak about what breaks the fast. The second issue, the time, from Fajr to Maghrib. This is the second controversial issue. What time is Fajr? What time is Fajr? You got one timetable saying it's about 1:15 or 1:30. You go to the other mosque and they got 2:30. You go online, you got 3:30. You go to some of the sites there and they got 4:15. And it's the same Fajr. So now we've got a problem. For the prayer itself, it wasn't too difficult, because particularly it's recommended to delay your Fajr, so it's not too difficult with prayer. It's recommended to delay your Fajr. The Prophet prayed Fajr later rather than at the beginning time. So prayer is not an issue. The problem is with fasting, with sahur, when do you stop eating? First, why do we have such a wide discrepancy within the times? The reason is because we're in that time of year. The issue begins with the Isha time. Around 3 months of the year, which starts from, I think it's the middle of May, around May the 14th or 15th, and it goes on until about July the 28th, towards the end of July, where you have no end of Maghrib. Maghrib just goes into Fajr. There is no actual Isha time. Because the Prophet defined the Isha time when he said, إِذَا غَابَ الشَّفَقِ. He said, when twilight disappears. And twilight is either the redness in the sky or the clear sky that comes after. You don't have that within these, because we're in northern latitudes. The further north you go, you're not going to have a night time. You're not going to have a night time within the summer. And for 3 months of the year, we face that. So it's not just the Isha Fajr, even your Isha. You go to mosque and there's different Isha times, so it's all made up. It's all made up. it's all just calculated. They just fix the time and go with that. Like somebody comes to me and says, 2 weeks ago, and says, the mufti down the road saying, pray your Isha 20 minutes after, just fix it and go with 20 minutes after Maghrib. So if you want. Because there is no Isha time. Some will do standard 1 hour after, 1 hour 30 after. Marhaba, do whatever you want. As long as you stick to something, do whatever you want, because there is no set Isha time. You don't have a disappearance of the twilight. And then it goes into the Fajr time without a beginning of Fajr. Hence you have these calculated Fajr times. Some will divide the night into half and say Fajr begins after half the night. Some will go with angles, 18 degrees, 15 degrees. Some will divide the night up into 7 parts and say the last 7th is the Fajr. The first 7th is Maghrib, and the 5/7 in between is Isha. All these different ways of trying to work out, but it's all calculated times. For the first 3 weeks within Ramadan, you have no Fajr time. It's calculated. So life becomes very easy, because you can take anyone that you want, as long as you stick to it. So if for your personal situation, you just decide the 1:30 timetable, I'll go with it. Even though the mosque is doing 2:30, I'll go with the 1:30 because it means I can stay up till about 1:30. Just before Tarawih, we'll probably finish around 12:30. The Imams are fast enough to get it over and done with. You need to employ the faster ones this year. Need more time for round 2 with the food. So just before 1:30 is your time, so just before that you have your suhoor. And then after 1:30 you pray your Fajr, go to bed and you're okay. You don't need to worry again after that. You don't need to wake up. You want to be a bit more pious, you want to struggle a bit more, the safest thing, do your suhoor earlier, before the earliest time, and delay your Fajr as late as possible. That's the safest thing, because then you've got yaqeen and you've got certainty on both matters. But particularly within the first 3 weeks, you're easier. What not to do, don't just play around now and say, today I want to get to bed early, so I'll do the 1:30, but tomorrow I'm okay, I'll stay up a bit later, so I'll go with the later time. It's not something to play around with. You've got that breathing space in these months. It's rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala towards the Muslims in the northern latitudes, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but don't play around with the religion of God. Just stick to one. And again here, if your family's going with the 2:30, just let them be. Someone's going with the later time, just let them be. Let them be. As long as they're going with something and you're not playing around with it. So Fajr, the Sahur, that's the only issue with that. Maghrib, we'll come back to the issue of Iftar. The third part of fasting is niyyah, intention. A discussion of intention. You must make intention for your fast to be valid. Intention is in the heart, it's not on the tongue. The intention on the tongue, what you say on the tongue is not intention, it's just words to help you to focus your intention. But intention is a condition for your fast. If you woke up in the morning, you never made an intention, you went the whole day without eating food, particularly in winter, it's possible for that to happen. That's nothing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You must have made an intention beforehand. You cannot make a block intention for the whole month. You can't now decide, niyyah, I'm fasting the whole Ramadan. Every fast is a separate day, it needs a new intention. The time period for the intention begins at Maghrib. If, for example, you want to fast tomorrow, Saturday, you want to do a nafil fast, it's too early now to make it, but in about half an hour, when Maghrib comes, that's the first point you can make intention. You could, every time you sit down and do iftar, at that point you can make intention for the next day. The first point you make intention, you can make intention, it's valid as Maghrib. The preferred time to make intention is just before Fajr. Just before Fajr. You have your suhoor, just before Fajr, make niyyah. The last time you can make an intention is before Dhuhr. Before Dhuhr. With the fard and then nafil fast, with the Ramadan fast and nafil fast, if you woke up after Fajr and you had no thought in your mind that I'm fasting, it's a Monday and you normally fast, but that night you didn't make an intention, and it's 10 o'clock, you woke up at 9, 10 o'clock. Like the Prophet ﷺ, one day he woke up, he had a meeting, he asked his wives, is there any food? He said no. He said, then I'll fast. So you wake up after Fajr, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, as long as you haven't got to Dhuhr. Once you're after Dhuhr, it's more than half a day without intention, it's not valid. It has to be before Dhuhr. Any point you can still, provided you've not eaten, then you can still make an intention and it's valid. So you've got 3 points now with intention. The beginning time is Maghrib. The end time, the last point, the earliest time is Maghrib, the latest time is Dhuhr, the preferred time is before Fajr. People who are not required to fast all legally responsible Muslims are required to fast. A legally responsible Muslim is somebody who's sane and adult. Sane and adult. And we'll come on to the point of an adult. Because the earliest age is, for a female is 9, for a male is 12. And so we'll come on to that point. What we consider a child in Sharia is not usually a child. Like someone's a teenager, we still treat them as kids. With Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the latest point you become an adult is 15. Earliest for a female is 9. Earliest for a male is 12. We'll come back to that point. So all Muslims are exempted, but there are certain who have excuses that all Muslims are required to fast. There are certain who are exempted from fasting if they have excuses. The first one is a sick person. Somebody who's sick, and one of three things will happen if you fast. Either it will make his sickness worse, or it will delay his recovery from that sickness, or he's just recovered from his sickness and it will trigger that sickness again. Any one of those three things happen. Either it will make the sickness worse, or it will delay the recovery, or it will trigger that sickness again. He's exempted from fasting. He's not required to fasting. He's not required to fast. There are certain sicknesses where it's actually advisable to fast, and it actually helps that person recover from that sickness. In those cases, there are certain types of diabetes, for example, where it's actually advised not to eat and drink. There are certain sicknesses where it's actually better not to eat and drink. In that case, that person is not allowed to stop fasting. He must fast. It's only one of those three things that'll make it worse, delay recovery, or trigger. How do you determine those three things? 3 ways. A Muslim doctor tells you. A Muslim doctor. With the doctor, medical advice tells you should not fast. With the doctor, it has to be Muslim. If the doctor you go to is not Muslim and he tells you shouldn't fast, you need a second opinion. You need to go to a Muslim. You do not base religious acts on the statements of somebody who's not a Muslim. It's a religious act now. You're now not going to fast. For that to happen, it has to be a Muslim who tells you that. So the first thing has to be a Muslim. There's enough Muslim doctors around. There's more than enough of them. Muslim doctor who's practicing, that reduces it significantly. That reduces it. We need somebody who's practicing here. Even if he's not practicing, you can take his opinion, his medical advice, provided you know he's not going to give you bad advice. Meaning that if you know he knows that you're fasting and he's got some type of faith within you, he's not going to mess you about. He's not going to mess you about with it. If it's a Muslim doctor who doesn't care whether you fast or not, and he advises you not to fast, then you need to get another opinion. You need to get another opinion. It's got to be something within him where he's not going to mess you about, even though he's not practicing. It could be a male or female, it doesn't make a difference. As long as a Muslim practicing doctor tells you don't fast, then you don't fast. Medical advice, not scholarly advice. Because somebody just before, I was asked a few weeks ago, somebody had a sickness and say, go to an alim and ask him, can I fast or not? I said, you're going the wrong person. Go to the doctor and ask him. The alim is not a doctor. He doesn't know whether it'll affect you. He just sets the guidelines. He just tells you the rule. But the actual advice will come from the doctor, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask people of knowledge if you don't know. And they're the ones with knowledge in these matters. So medical advice is required. Second, past experience. You suffered that problem before, and it was a problem, and you couldn't fast, and you're suffering the same problem again, you don't need to ask a doctor. You can just rely on your past experience. The third, غَلَبَةَ الظَّنِّ. It's fairly obvious to you that you can't fast. You're weak. You can barely move. You don't need to get onto the phone and go to the doctors or anything like that. It's obvious that you can't fast. So 3 ways of determining: Muslim doctor, past experience, or probability, high degree of probability. The doctor, the medical advice is only if it's a borderline case. That's where you need it, where you're not sure, can I do it or not. If it's obvious to you that you can't fast, then you don't fast. What's the rule? If you can't fast, or you shouldn't fast, and you decide, I'm going to fast anyway, a religious hero, I'm going to be pious now, I'm going to fast, I don't care what the doctor tells me, I'm going to fast anyway. It may be haram upon you to fast. Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lifted for the sick person and traveller, the obligation of fasting, He said, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants ease for you, He doesn't want difficulty for you. So at this point, if when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you, you're sick, I don't want you to fast, and you're not allowed to fast, and you go and do it, that fast becomes a source of sin, not of reward. That fast becomes sinful, it doesn't become a reward of that. If it's something you may be able to struggle through, it's still better not to fast, but if it's going to cause you real harm or damage, then you're not allowed to fast in that case. That's a sick person. What does a sick person do? He doesn't fast. Then what? So he makes qada, he makes them up. He does qada of those days that he's not able to fast. And again, rahmatullahi alayhi, this is divine mercy upon us. Somebody's sick in this Ramadan. So that's a real mercy of Allah, because when you make it up, you don't need to do it in the summer, you can do it in the winter. So the fast that was 18 hours, 19 hours, now becomes a 7-8 hour fast. Alhamdulillah, don't complain about it, just take it as it is. That's Allah's mercy towards us. And so any time of the year that you can do, like somebody who suffers severe case of asthma, using the inhaler breaks your fast. Using the inhaler breaks your fast. Somebody's diabetic has got to take a couple of injections. Injections doesn't break your fast, but it's the food that they normally have to eat beforehand. We'll speak about injection, but the food, normally they need to eat food with that. If you can space it out in the winter, then you do qada in the winter. If you can space it out. If you can't, that's a different discussion, but if you can make it up, and it's easier to make it up, then you do it, then you make it up. You're not required to fast on the long days, and you take your medicine before sahur, and you take it again after iftar, and if you can space with that in a difficulty, then that's your obligation. Then the question comes, what if he's got a permanent sickness where there's no hope of recovery from that? Like severe case of asthma, where he's not going to recover from that. See, he pays fidya, he makes a payment for every day. Somebody who's not going to recover from a medical problem, there's no expected recovery and it's going to last until his dying days. He makes a payment for every day, equivalent to sadaqat al-fitr. Each day, sadaqat al-fitr. How much do you charge in the mosque? How much is it? How much sadaqat al-fitr? Your committee member, how much are you charging them this year? Don't be charging too much. Okay, too much. Too much. All of the mosques charge too much for sadaqat fitr. It's perhaps no more than £1, £1.50. Where's the money going? On Eid it's not a problem because everybody's generous on the day of Eid. Everyone's going to pay out. It doesn't really matter, even if you're not required to, you're still going to go and pay anyway. The problem is this. Somebody's sick, every year he's got to make 30 payments. If it's £3, someone, a mosque that I went to, £5. £5. Don't be getting ideas. Don't get ideas. Don't go for Eid to Victoria Park Mosque, they're going to charge you £5 to come in. £5 to get into pray Eid this year. When it's 30 lots of it, instead of like £2 the match, it's £60 for the year, it's £150, £90, significant difference. And there's another issue that makes a massive difference. So at the most, maybe you're looking at £2. It's worked out on half a sa' of wheat. Sa' was an old measure of weight or volume, and one sa' is approximately 3.4 kilograms, 1.7 kilograms, half a sa' of wheat is not £5. It's not £3. It's not £3. It's less than that. So that person who's permanently sick and cannot fast, for every single day he has to give in sadaqah, charity, a payment for every day, provided he will remain that way. If he pays, as somebody's told me, I'm going to pay anyway, I'm just going to make the payment, even though I'm going to be able to do it in winter. That's sadaqah, that's not a requirement. The requirement is to make it up. If you pay and then you recover, you still got to make up those days. The payment is only if you can't do the qada. That's a sick person. Then you have the traveller. Traveller is defined, the definition of who's musafir. Somebody who travels a distance of more than 57 miles. and remains at that place from his hometown, and remains at that place for less than 15 days. Two requirements. Both of them must be in place. More than 57 miles, and there are different figures that are given because it's a conversion from an old measurements. More than 57 days, more than 57 miles, less than 15 days. If, for example, Manchester to London, in Ramadan you travel Manchester to London, and you stay there for 2 days, you're a traveller. You're a traveller. You're allowed not to fast. But if you travel Manchester to Liverpool, you must fast. It's less than 57 miles. Or you travel Manchester to London and stay there for a month, you must fast. You must fast. Both requirements must be in place for you to be a traveller. If you go from Manchester to Liverpool, you're still a resident. You're still considered resident. If you go from Manchester to London and stay there a month, whilst you're in London, you consider a resident in London. So that's the definition. Both of those, more than 57 miles, and you stay there for less than 15 days. If you're a traveller, you fulfill that definition. You have two options. In the Quran it says, وَأَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. It's better for you to fast if you. First option, fast. It's rewarded. Even if you choose not to fast, it's rewarded, provided there's no difficulty. Better to fast. Because if you're down in London for a week, you're staying with family or friend, how hard is it to fast? You're not actually going through a difficult journey. You're actually settled there for a week. Easiest thing. So whilst everybody's fasting, why not do it then instead of waiting and having to make it up? Do whilst everybody else is doing. Better to do that way. But you can choose not to fast and make it up. You can choose not to. Even though it's easy for you, you can choose not to. As an example, and I'll mention this, and they say, don't ever do this. There's just an example to highlight this, and this is an insane case of law, fiqh going out of control. If you travel for the last 10 days to Mecca and stay there for 10 days, you can sit at the Haram in Mecca and not fast. Why? Because you're traveling more than 57 miles less than 10 days. It's the daftest thing you'll ever do. Although legally you're justified, because one fast in Mecca is equivalent to 100,000 fasts. One fast in Mecca, we have the hadith about prayer, 100,000. Same with fast. There's hadith that speak about fast. So you're sat there saying, I'm a traveller, I'm not going to fast, and I'll make it up back in England. England is just one fast. Mecca is 100,000. It's 100,000. So sometimes, although the fiqh tells you can get away with it, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to do that. So as a traveller, if it's not difficult, it's better for you to fast. But if it's difficult, the journey, actually on the journey, like you're flying from Manchester Airport to Jeddah to go for Umrah, and you know you get to Jeddah, that's the beginning of the difficulty. The flight is the easiest bit. Once you try to get through immigration at Jeddah, that's where the nightmare starts. So you're fasting and it's hard. In that case, you can choose not to fast. However, and this is a very important point because most don't mention this and it needs to be mentioned, if you're a traveller and you choose not to fast, you must be a traveller before Fajr. You must be a traveller before Fajr. If your flight leaves Manchester Airport at 9 o'clock in the morning, you cannot break your fast. Because you're a resident. You can only break your fast as a traveller. But it's not break your fast, you can only not fast if you're a traveller before Fajr. No. So if, for example, in the example we mentioned, you travel down to London, it's a day of fasting. You travel down lunchtime, Dhuhr time. When you become a traveller, it's not when you cross 57 miles, it's when you leave the boundaries of your city. When you leave the boundaries of your city. So now you start your journey and decide I'm travelling or breaking fast. Haram to do that. It's haram to do that. Because it's daytime. You started the fast. You only have the option not to fast before Fajr. If you're a traveller before Fajr. So you travel down to London, even though it's difficult, you still got to fast that day. You get to London, you stay there for a week. All of those days before Fajr, every day you're a resident. Often say you're a traveller. Hence you can choose not to fast on those days. But on the day of journey, If you started the day as a traveller, then you can choose not to fast. But if you started it as a resident and then become a traveller, you cannot break your fast. That's the traveller. Then you have the third case, a frail elderly person. Somebody's old, weak, and getting weaker by the day, and there's no, in the 80s, 90s, and they're struggling, they're coming towards the end of their life, they're not required to fast. They're not required to fast. But it's only if they're weak and old and getting older and weaker by the day. There are some elderly people, particularly in the last generation when people used to live normal, healthy lives. 18, 19-year-olds were fit and healthy. 18, 19-year-olds were fit and healthy. Now you get 50, 60 and you're out of it. Then they just have drug you up on medicines and all kinds of medicines to keep you alive as long as possible. But the issue is not age, the issue is weakness, inability. The issue is not age. If that 18, 19-year-old is fit and healthy, he's required to fast. But the moment you become weak and old and frail and get weaker by the day and not long left for you to live, so when that person is exempted, what does he do? He makes the payments. The same as what we said for the sick, permanently sick person. For every day, sadaqat al-fitr. And this is where that £3, £5 becomes an issue, because that old age pensioner, you're charging them too much. They can barely survive, and then here's you charging £3 for every fast. Some people are old, can't afford it. What are they required to do? Just make istighfar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing's required of them. They're only required to make the payment if they're able to afford it. If they're not able to afford it, nothing's required of them. No fast, no payment. Pregnant woman and a breastfeeding woman. Pregnant woman and breastfeeding woman, the rule of fasting is treated similar to the sick person. If the fasting is going to be difficult for her, either for her, the mother, or the unborn child, or the mother, and the breastfeeding it's not usually the mother, it's the child that needs to be breastfed. If there's any difficulty, again based upon the advice of a Muslim doctor, skilled Muslim doctor, practicing doctor, or here we can also add a midwife, a Muslim midwife. If she says you should not fast, and she doesn't fast, then she doesn't fast. Or past experience, last time she was pregnant, the first pregnancy, she tried and she couldn't do it, she doesn't need to do it. Or it's fairly obvious, it's like 8 months into her pregnancy and Ramadan starts, let's just leave her. You doesn't need to go and ask any doctor, it's obvious that she's in struggle. So pregnant woman. Breastfeeding lasts for 2 years, at the most 2.5 years. A mother can breastfeed a child 2 years. With Abu Hanifa, you can go an extra 6 months and do 2.5 years, but no more than that. So within that time period, and breastfeeding is always better. It's confirmed medically, scientifically better. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, وَالْوَالِدَاتُ يُرْضِعْنَ أَوْلَادَهُنَّ حَوْلَيْنِ كَامِلَيْنِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that mothers should breastfeed their children for 2 complete years. Mothers should breastfeed their children for 2 complete years. So this woman's now pregnant in Ramadan, she doesn't fast. Then she's breastfeeding the next 2 years, she doesn't fast. 3 years, she doesn't fast. What then does she do? She makes them qada, and that's it, nothing more. She doesn't need to make a payment in addition to that. She doesn't need to make, all she's required to do is just make up those days. So for her, assuming she's going to breastfeed, that's 3 years, 3 Ramadan, she makes qada. And as we're going to see, although it sounds a lot, it's not as difficult as it seems. But the problem is, she was pregnant, that's 1 Ramadan. And she breastfeeds in the next 2 years, that's 3 Ramadans. And then she has another child. That's another 3 Ramadans. And then she has a 3rd child. And in the last generation, you have 5 to 10 children. She's got a lot to do. It's going to build up, I think. 10 kids, that's 300 odd fast, that's almost a year's worth of fast she's got to make up. And back in those times, they were just rolling out the kids one after the other. So it would get difficult in that case. But she's got to do qada of all of them, but she's not required to do anything other than that. Just qada, make them up, and nothing else. The last case is menstruating woman or woman in postnatal bleeding. A menstruating woman, or a woman who's given birth to a child and they're bleeding after, it's not only does she not fast, it's haram wala yasih. It's haram for her to fast, and it's not counted as anything. See, that sick person was not allowed to fast, but if they struggled through it and they went through all the pain of it, and at the end of it they did it, it's a fast. But the menstruant woman is not allowed to fast, and it won't count as anything if she did fast. It won't count as anything if she did fast. And same with the woman in postnatal bleeding. Menstruation is from 3 to 10 days. During those days, she's not allowed to fast. Postnatal bleeding is a maximum of 40 days. It's not 40 days. Here, just to correct a common error, women assume, child is born, I don't pray for 40 days, I don't fast for 40 days, so it's not 40 days, it's as long as the bleeding lasts within 40 days. If it stops on day 20, and quite often it stops early, it's maximum of 40 days. If it stops on day 20, that's it. And she's clean, she takes her ghusl, she prays, she reads the Quran, she goes and masjid. She does, all the prohibitions are lifted. So a menstruate woman or a woman in postnatal bleeding, they're not allowed to fast, and they shouldn't even imitate the act of fasting. Like a woman says, okay, I know I can't fast, but I'll just go without anyway. She shouldn't do that, she should eat. At-tashabbuh bis-sa'imi. Impersonating the act or imitating the act of fasting for a menstruate woman is prohibited. She eats privately whilst other people are not around. The first day when her menstruation started, on the day that her menstruation started, the first day, she was clean. Then during the daytime, and she made near a fast. Then during the daytime, her menstruation started. She checks and she started bleeding. Her fast is over for that day. Her fast is over for that day. She can now go and eat and drink. She goes and eats and drink. The remainder of that day while she's menstruating, and the whole of that day she'll have to make up. Even though she started to clean, the menstruation starts within that day. And then, for example, the next 5 days she's menstruating, she'll make up all of those days as well. And then the last day, and she now goes and checks. She has a normal habit of 5 days, for example, or 7 days. She started, and she did 5 more days, and then the last day she goes and checks. And then during the daytime of Ramadan, she notices the bleeding is stopped. She takes a ghusl, and then what she do? Wajib al-imsak. She must now abstain from eating and drinking for the rest of that day. She must abstain from eating and drinking for the rest of that day. That day is not counted as a fast. She's still got to make up that day. But the abstention, as a rule, we have a rule which states that if a person was not required to fast at the beginning of the day, and their situation changed such that they were now able to fast, they abstain for the rest of that day and still make up that day. So the 2 examples I've spoken about is a menstruate woman who started impure. Then around Dhuhr time she checks and she's clean, she does a ghusl, she stops eating and drinking for the rest of that day and makes up that day. A traveller. How does a traveller become a resident? 2 ways. Returns back home to the boundary city. The second, he makes intention that he's going to stay at that place for more than 15 days. If you're in London 7 days and your family's put pressure on you, stay here for a month, so you decide I'll stay here for a month. The moment you make that decision, now you're a resident. You're a resident. So you chose not to fast on that day. You were there for 7 days. Day 7 you decided not fasting because you thought you were travelling, but then they put pressure on you, you say, no, I'm going to stay for a month. You're now a resident. It means you've got to abstain for the rest of that day. Why do you abstain for that day? Because it's Ramadan. Out of respect for the sanctity of the blessed month, you abstain for the rest of the day, but you still have to make that up. So menstruating woman, a woman in postnatal bleeding, does not fast. A side question. Women who menstruate, there are 7 acts that are prohibited for them. And we'll just list them out quickly, but to pick up on a point which is more related to spiritual part. She's not allowed to pray. She's not allowed to read Quran. Nor is she allowed to touch Quran. She's not allowed to enter into the masjid. She's not allowed to do tawaf. She's not allowed to have any marital relations. And she's not allowed to fast. The 7 prohibitions for a woman who's menstruating or in a state of postnatal bleeding. Muslim women start complaining. I'm menstruating and I'm not getting the feel of this blessed month because I can't do anything. So there's a lot you can do. I can't engage in worship. There's a lot you can do. A Muslim woman The Hanafi jurors, they mention when a woman is menstruating, it's recommended she does a wudu at the time of prayer. Go and sit at the place you would normally sit and do dhikr of Allah subhanahu for that time. And do dhikr of Allah subhanahu for that time. Because in that list of 7 wasn't dhikr. A lot of common error, a lot of people assume she's not allowed to do dhikr, she can't do darushi, salawat, adding things onto that list. The Messenger ﷺ did not forbid her to do dhikr. He did not forbid her from doing salawat, doing darushi. The only thing she's forbidden from is prayer, touching Quran, reading Quran. She can do dhikr of Allah subhanahu. So it's recommended 5 times a day while she's meant to sit there at the place she would have normally prayed and do dhikr, so you don't break the connection. So she doesn't break the connection. When's that get hard? Fajr. She thought she had a light. Get up, do some dhikr. Don't break the connection, because Fajr, people struggle with Fajr. 7 days off there, she might lose it. Get up and just spend 10 minutes just doing some dhikr of Allah. So all the husbands just wake them up at that time. Don't accept that excuse that I'm not praying. Get them up. Make sure that this even though it's not far, just make it hard upon them. Right, Asif? And you too as well, you make sure you get up as well. Same with fasting, because the issue was spoken about, Shaykh Haroon, he mentioned about the importance of Quran. So now she's going to say, I can't read Quran for 7 days. So you can look at it, you can listen to it. You can look at it, you can listen to it. Have a play, listen to it. It's not part of your khatam. A woman has to work out her khatam and include within it, like exclude, subtract out the days she's not going to be praying or reading Quran. So instead of, she hasn't got 30 days, she's got 23 days, for example. So she needs to do a bit more every day. She needs to do a bit more. But within those 7 days, during that time, listen to Quran. Listen, the time that she's allotted, because all of you should have allotted time during the day when you're reading Quran in Ramadan. That time that you've allotted for reading Quran, don't say, no, I can't do anything. Listen to Quran. Sit there and do dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Listen to, there's a lot of other ways that you can engage. And as you listen to the Quran, just have it open on your laptop and follow it on that. So because the Prophet said, looking at the Quran is an act of worship. Looking at the Quran, another in al-Mushaf ibadah. Looking at the Quran is an act of worship. Listen to the Quran. Prophet ﷺ Sahaba come and read it so you can just listen to it. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, they asked him to sit down and read it to him. They said to him, ﷺ, how can we read it to you when it's revealed to you? He said, I want to hear. Just allow your ears to listen to the Quran. So a woman who's menstruating, she should not come and start making excuses that I can't do anything in the month. There's a lot she can do. The key act she can't do is pray, and she can't recite the Quran. But anything else, she can do. Amjad at the back. Is he there? What are we doing for time? Because it's Maghrib now. And we're halfway through. Should we cancel Maghrib? No. What are we doing? 10 minutes. Let's ask, do you want everybody needs to go home? Let's have a show of hands. You can carry on after Maghrib for about half an hour. Let's have a show of hands. Okay, we'll carry on after Maghrib. Everybody else can go home. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد خاتم النبيين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. وبعد. The 5th point, following on from the case of those who were exempted from fasting, in all of those cases the requirement was for them to make up, or most of those cases the requirement was for them to make up the days that they can't fast. So now we discuss some rules about making up missed fasts. The qada is fard, just like the original fast was fard. It's not something that drops from that person. It remains upon that person as an obligation until that person's dying day. As with prayer, your prayer is fard, you do it within the time. If you fail to do it, it doesn't drop. It remains an obligation upon you until your dying day. Same with fast. It's not a requirement that you must do it before the next Ramadan. It's not a requirement that you must do it before the next Ramadan. But the sooner you do it, the better it is. And it's recommended as soon as. The ideal thing, you want to do the best way. As soon as Ramadan's over, Eid, you're not allowed to fast in Eid. In the second of Shawwal, get straight onto your qada, because you're already in the habit of fasting. And then do your 6 days of Shawwal after that. So try and do your qada as soon as. Try not to delay. And especially for women, because men, year after year, they shouldn't really be missing fast unless one of these reasons arises. But for a woman, year after year, she's building up fast that she has to make up. Unless she's an elderly lady who's not menstruating every year, it's just going to keep on adding up. So the better thing for her is just get it done straight away. Get it done straight away. But if she delays, or he delays up until the next Ramadan, there's no penalty. You do it then after that. If you just keep on delaying it, no penalty. There's no penalty other than the requirement, other than you're required to make it up as soon as. So making up the missed fasts is fard. Better to do as soon as. It's not a condition, it must be done before the next Ramadan, but it makes more sense to do it as soon as. There's two opinions, a common question which I'll try and intercept. People regularly ask the question, can I combine the qada with the 6 days of Shawwal? I just to mention the 6 days of Shawwal, very important to try and fast the 6 days of Shawwal. Because the Prophet ﷺ spoke about a person who fasts Ramadan and then follows it with 6 of Shawwal, it's as though he's fasted the whole of that year. Gets the reward of fasting the whole year. So you want to try and get those 6 days. You can do them however you want within Shawwal. You can do them 6 on a row. You can space it out like somebody works and he just decides I'll do 3 weekends. Saturday, Sunday, 3, that's fine, whichever way you want. But the two opinions in the madhab, can you combine and make an intention of nafil as well as fard? As a general rule in the madhab, you're not allowed to do that. As a general rule, you're not allowed to have a dual intention of nafil as well as a fard at the same time. You've stood up, prayed 2 sunnah of maghrib and qada of the first fajr I missed. You can't do that. You can't combine, it's either or. It's either or. So here, what seems to be stronger is that you do the qada separate of the Shawwal fast. And if you're going to do that, which is how it should be done, what makes more sense is do the qada first. Do the qada first. Because the qada is more important than the 6 days. So if a woman, for example, who will guarantee won't be fasting, she's got 7 days to make up. Do those 7 days, and then on top of that, as soon as they're finished, then do the 6 days after that. We mentioned that it's an obligation to fast within Ramadan, and if a person fails to do so, whether they have a reason or not, then it's an obligation to make up. So as long as you're alive, the obligation remains upon you. But somebody's now old, approaching the end of their life, and they're physically not able to do it anymore, but they've still got some outstanding fasts, and we can also add prayers outstanding. It still doesn't drop. What then is required? So that somebody's on their deathbed or dying or expects not to live too much longer, and they still got prayers of fast. Every prayer, as well as every fast, they have to leave in their will as a bequest for every single prayer and fast, a payment to be made in charity, the equivalent of sadaqat al-fitr, zakat al-fitr. The obligation does not drop even when that person dies. The obligation of prayer and fast does not drop even when that person dies. But this one, however, needs that person leaves it as part of their will, as a bequest. A separate point here, but just to clarify this, if somebody, for example, has 30 days left, they've been working through their fast, 30 days left, they've been trying to get through all their prayers and they've got a small number of prayers left, on their deathbed, they should make a statement, either written or verbal, saying that I have 30 fasts left out of my estate, I want them to be paid for. I have so many prayers left out of my estate, I want them to be paid for. That's part of the bequest. The rule, and this goes on to a dying person, the rule is as follows. Person dies and he leaves wealth behind, estate behind. How does it go? First thing, it's used to pay for funeral expenses. The funeral expenses are they're not required of anybody other than from the estate of that person himself. So it's not something that automatically falls onto family. If that person has wealth, it comes out to that first. Second, any debts that he owes towards people, any human debts must be paid out of that person's estate. Third, any bequest that he leaves, which includes here his qada. That comes out of, but that the Prophet stipulates a maximum 1/3. That only comes out to 1/3, no more than that. If, as is becoming more and more common, which needs to be stopped, husband says, I'm leaving all of everything I have to my wife or to my eldest son, la yajuz, that's prohibited. That's prohibited to be done. You can only bequest to somebody who's not entitled to inheritance. You can only bequest to somebody who's not entitled to inheritance. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, La wasiyyata liwarithin. There is no bequest to an inheritor. If it's your son, he's already entitled to share, stated in the Quran. Stated in the Quran. It's your wife, she's getting 1/4 or 1/8. If it's son, he's going to get his share. Father, mother going to get their share. You don't start now saying diverting all of your wealth towards them. Part of the bequest, or that 1/3, will go towards your prayers and your fasts that are outstanding. And then whatever's left after that, that's where inheritance comes in. Whatever's left after all of that is inheritance. So the important thing there, because most people are completely oblivious of this, prayers and fast are not dropped because the time's gone out. Qada. And even if you're dead, still not dropped. You must leave a bequest to make payments if you have the wealth to make that payment. And then, inshallah, we hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives that person after that. Then we go on to the next issue. That's making up. Now we look at what breaks the fast. What breaks the fast? Fasting is broken 2 ways. Okay, Muhammad? You okay? Alhamdulillah. Fasting is broken 2 ways. Or not 2 ways, 2 separate rules in terms of breaking fast. There is a case where if you break the fast, you have to do qada and kafara. You have to make up that day that you've missed, but on top of that you have a punishment, a penalty, which we'll discuss. So in one particular case, you have qada and kafara. The consequence of breaking a fast is you must make up that day as well as the penalty. There's a penalty that's imposed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are other cases where if you miss it, the standard normal case, you've not fasted, you just need to make up that day and nothing more. So we look at the first case where there's a penalty that's imposed on top of it. The fast of Ramadan is broken and requires a penance. Penance in Arabic is called kafara. It's a punishment for that person. It's a punishment against. It's an act of worship, but it's a punishment against that person for belittling the value of fast of the month of Ramadan. A penance if the person had begun the fast and for no valid reason broke the fast. In that definition, in that rule, there's 3 things we want to point out here. Penalty only applies first if it's in the month of Ramadan. If you're fasting in Ramadan and broke it, then a penalty is required. If you're doing nothing and decide I'm not going to carry on, you're not allowed to do that, but no penalty is required. If you're doing a qada of a fast of Ramadan and then you just decide I'll stop, there's no penalty required for breaking the qada. It's only a fast of Ramadan within Ramadan. That's the first point. The second point, you've begun the fast. Penalty is not required. The penance is not required if you never fasted at all. Like somebody wasn't practicing, never used to pray, never used to fast for years. Right? 5 years he was off it, and now he come back to religion. What's required? Is he required now to do kafara for all? Penalty? No, it's only if you started the fast, made intention to fast that day, Fajr comes in, and then for no valid reason whatsoever you broke it. Somebody who never bothered to fast in the first place, there's no punishment. You just need to, that person who started practicing now has got years when they never fasted, there's no penalty on top of it except for make up those days that you missed. That's what's required of that person. The third point, and for no valid reason broke the fast. No reason, we went through a list of reasons, sickness, traveller, all these kind of things, the reasons to break the fast. For no valid reason, wasn't mistaken, didn't forget, nothing, he just decides, I'm not going to go on with it. Started the fast, I'm not going to go on with it anymore, and he eats or drinks. He's got to make up that day, and he's got to do the penalty on top of it. Now here, we spoke about children before, and we'll bring this issue up because people need to start racking their brains now and try and remember how far back, because the issue of qada now comes in. At what point did you become an adult? At what point did you become an adult? We've already spoken about that, because the issue of kafara, because unfortunately, a lot of people are made to fast when they're kids, or when they think they're kids, although they're adults, like 16, father's beating them into fasting. And while the father's not looking, he's munching away. This rule now states it's kafara, because he's an adult. He started the fast and then broke it for no valid reason. There's now a penalty upon him. So now we need to go back to when did the fast start for that person? So for a female, the earliest point where a female becomes an adult is 9 years of age. She doesn't become an adult from that, but the first point after the age of 9, she menstruates, she's an adult. So a female could potentially become an adult from the age of 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Any of those years she can become an adult. So a woman has to go back and try and remember, when was my first menstruation? At that point, said every year from that point onwards, she was required to fast. And so even though you've got like a 10-year-old, she's not a child. She's potentially not a child, although you're going to treat her as a child. 12-year-old, you're going to treat her as a child. She's not a child. If she started a menstruation, she's not a child. She's an adult with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and she's required now to start fasting and praying and so on. For a male, males mature later, right? Some don't mature at all. I'm looking at one right. From the age of 12, the first point to become an adult is 12. 12, from 12 onwards, between 12 and 15. Note, we've got a range of years, 9 to 15. Between 9 to 15, that's the first point a female will become an adult. 15 is the last point. Whether she's menstruated or not, 15, she's an adult automatically. So between 9 to 15, male 12 to 15. 12 to 15, between the ages 12 and 15. So if a male knows that he had a wet dream from the age of 12 onwards, he's an adult from that point onwards. If no menstruation for a female, no wet dream for a male, adult at the age of 15. So now people need to start going back and thinking, how many qadars have I got? Because if they weren't fasting at the age of 15, they weren't fasting at the age of 8, not a problem. 9, maybe not a problem for a female. You've got to now go back and think. And if somebody says, I can't remember, a question that comes with qada, what if you don't know how many you've got? So you overestimate. Let's try and figure out and then add some on top. Why? Because you don't want to stand in front of Allah subhanahu with even one prayer or one fast missing. You don't want to ask Allah. You don't want Allah subhanahu to ask you, why did you not make up that fast? Why didn't you do it in the first place? That's hard enough as it is. But inshallah you make tawbah, you repent after you've done the qada. So now Allah subhanahu hopefully will not ask you. But if you've got any outstanding, that questioning may well be very difficult. So just add extra on top, and if it turns out you did more than what you needed, then it's nafil fast. But the same with kafara. If you go back now and think, I was 16 and I was made to fast and I broke my fast, and you've got to do kafara, because 16 is an adult. 16 is an adult. What is the kafara? The penance is to free a slave. That doesn't apply. This happened to a companion. A companion comes to the Prophet ﷺ and says, وَقَعْتُ أَهْلِي نَهَارَ Ramadan. I had marital relations with my wife during the daytime of Ramadan. What do I do? The Prophet ﷺ said, أَعْتِقْ رَقَبَةً. So free a slave. He said, I don't own a slave. He said, fast 60 days. He said, I couldn't do one day. He said, I couldn't do one day. How am I going to do 60 days? The Prophet ﷺ said, feed 60 poor people. He said, I've got nothing. So the Prophet ﷺ asked him to bring some dates. He gave him the dates. He said, go and feed 60 poor people. He said, there's nobody in Medina poorer than me. He said, eat them yourself. He said, eat them yourself. Except for that last bit, those eat them yourself. That's the rule. If you intentionally start a fast and break it without a valid reason, that's what's required. Slaves don't exist. So now we go on to the second one, and that's the one that we look at. If somebody knows now that they've broken a fast without a valid reason, and they're adults, you've got to make up that one day, and then you've got to do 60 days on top of it. You've got to do 60 days. The one day is for the day that you missed. The 60 days is a punishment for missing that or breaking that day. The 60 days is a punishment. But then there's a key word in there, it says consecutive. Consecutive means you can't take a break. So if you're on day 59 and it's getting hard for you and you're knocked out and I can't do this anymore, so just do one more day, otherwise you'll have to do 60 all over again. And you don't want to do 60 all over again. You can say it's harsh, so you shouldn't have messed about with the day in the first place. It's a punishment. Punishment by their nature are harsh. So 60 days without a break. There's only one accepted break. See, in Ramadan, you could have got away with being sick and a traveller. The kafara, punishment, you can't get away with that. What's the only one accepted break? Menstruating woman. Menstruating woman. She fasts 23 days of the month, and 7 days she stops, and then she carries on after. The day after she's clean, she carries on. If she delays it one day, she's got to start all over again. She's got to start all over again. So it's a punishment. If you like the companion and you realise that it's not even worth trying, because I know myself, or you've tried and you can't do it, then you go on to the third option, which is you feed 60 poor people. But you don't jump to the last one. You don't jump to the last one. Yeah, I got away with it, and I can just make a payment and I'm okay. Somebody came to me once and said that. He said, I was told, he said, he had a problem with smoking. He said, I can't stop myself smoking. And smoking requires kafara, penalty. He said, I try and I break it. So it was, I think it was day 28. He said, I've only done like 7 days this Ramadan. I keep on breaking it. He said, I was told I can just go and make a payment and I'm okay. He said, no, you're doing 60 days. And he wasn't happy. But you have to do 60 days. It's a punishment. It's a punishment for you. However, there is some rahmah within this. There's some ease, breathing space here, which is, what if you've broken more than one? How many sets of 60s have you got to do? So one covers all that went before. One set of 60 covers all that went before. If you've done the 60 and you broke it like 5 times, one set of 60 will cover all, but it won't cover any more that you break after that. You've done your 60 and think, nah, I'm okay now for the rest of my life. It'll only cover those that have gone before, and that's it. That's the penalty, that's the kafara. That was discussing the case where you break a fast, which is either eating, drinking or marital relations without any valid reason after having started. That's the rule. Now we look, and we're going to have to rush through these. The cases of a person who breaks a fast but does not require a penance. I hear he's broken his fast, he's just got to make it up and nothing more. First, you accidentally broke the fast. Accidental, by mistake. You broke your fast by mistake, you've broken your fast. You've broken your fast. Which is why, in Ramadan, be careful when you're doing wudu. Be careful when you do wudu. Don't put water to the back of your throat. That's sunnah, and it mentioned the hadith. Sunnah, when you wash the mouth and wash the nose, go back to the throat and to the top of the nose. The Prophet said, "Illa an takuna sa'iman," unless you're fasting. Unless you're fasting. Why is he telling you that? Because if it goes there, there's a possibility of slip without you being able to control it. If you do that, you've broken your fast. He said it was a mistake. You've broken your fast. The Prophet said, 3 things are being lifted from my ummah: forgetfulness, mistake, and things done under coercion. So the lifting here is a sin, not the act. Means that if you did it by mistake, you're not sinful, there's no penalty, but you've still broken your fast. Be careful if you use miswak. You're allowed to use miswak. As we mentioned, it's recommended to use miswak. Be careful that you don't swallow bits, because bits may well come out and you may swallow it. Even though it's accidental, you've still broken your fast. So anything you swallow accidentally will break your fast. An example of that is the second one. Be careful with your suhoor and iftar that you got the times right. Be careful you got the times right. It's recommended with your suhoor, the sunnah of the companions, they mentioned they would break their fasts the length of time it takes to read 50 verses before Fajr. That's the recommended thing to do. Leave a gap between your suhoor and Fajr. The mosque timetables, they always have end of Sahri time and beginning of Fajr. There's a mistake that they have with that. It's right, but they forget to tell you it's recommended. They say you must not eat after this time, you're not allowed to. That's wrong. You can eat all the way up until Fajr. Even a minute before Fajr you can eat. And it's important because the Prophet ﷺ recommended, highly encouraged that you eat something. Tasahharu fa inna fi sahuri baraka. He said take your sahur, pre-dawn meal, because there's blessings in it. Even a sip of water, even a date. If you can't wake up, you're tired, just have something, anything. But you can even go after, like normally things 20-30 minutes to put before the Fajr time. You can go after that. You can go after. Better is give yourself a gap, 20-30 minutes. That's a better thing. Stop early. Why? So that you've gone with the 2:30 time, and on your phone it's got 2:28, or you read 2:28 and you ate, then you realise after it's 2:38. You've broken your fast. You've broken your fast. It was a mistake. He said accidental breaks your fast. Accidental breaks your fast. One thing we didn't mention, if you broke your fast, you still need to abstain for the rest of the day. Why? Because what we mentioned, it's a sacred month. You don't eat and drink in this month, even if you're not fasting, unless the case that we mentioned, you broke your fast, you must abstain for the rest of that day. Wajib, you abstain for the rest of that day. So that's going to be a bit difficult, that one. You messed up with your sahur, and you're abstaining the whole of that day, know full well you've got to make up that day. Tough. Make sure you get the right time next time. The other nightmare is iftari. Somebody told me this happened to him. He said all the food was out there. He sat there a couple of minutes before Maghrib, and without thinking just picked up a date and ate it. Somebody looks at him like, why are you eating? Maghrib hasn't come in. He said, oops. He's got to make up the whole of that day. He said it was by mistake. He said accidental breaks your fast. Accidental breaks your fast. So be very careful. Try not to have a massive feast out in front of you. And if you must, then do it later on. Consuming anything. You swallow anything, put anything down your throat, you've broken your fast. Anything you swallow breaks the fast. When we spoke about penalty, that's food and drink. Food and drink, anything that's nutritious or medicinal, without any valid reason, you consume it, breaks your fast, and a penalty. But anything that you consume will break the fast. Paper, miswak, that miswak, little bits of wood, anything, like somebody bites his nail and by accident, think of anything absurd that you want, anything that goes down your throat will break your fast. Because the penalty only applies to nutrition or medicine, but you're putting something into your body and you've broken your fast. Anything inhaled through the nose. You do not use nasal sprays in Ramadan. You do not use nasal sprays in Ramadan. We're going to speak about other things like eye drops and Vaseline and all these other types of things, but nasal spray breaks your fast. Nasal spray breaks your fast. You do not inhale liquid whilst you're fasting, or break your fast. We said before, be careful when you're doing wudu, don't take it too far back, or break your fast. So don't inhale anything through the nose. Eardrops will break the fast. Water will not break it, but eardrops will break. Eye drops, originally the fuqaha said, the jurist says it doesn't. Some contemporary Hanafi jurist says it does. The safer thing is not to use eye drops. Eardrops definitely breaks. Eye drops, the safer thing is not to use them. But if somebody did, there's no harm. Eardrops breaks. Then also to add, because here what do we have here now? Passages into the stomach, the mouth, the nasal passage as well, which is connected. The other one to add here is the orifices, the rear orifice. You have to be careful when you're doing istinja in Ramadan, not to be excessive. The jurist mentioned don't be excessive. Any water that goes through will break the fast. When you're doing istinja, after urinating for a woman, she must be careful. She doesn't put a large amount of water, because if she puts too much water and it enters into the private part, it breaks her fast. For a male, it doesn't, because for a female, water will go in, whereas for a male, it doesn't go in. So with istinja, you should be careful that you don't allow liquids to enter. So using eardrops don't. The following acts do not break the fast. Eating, drinking, or sexual intercourse forgetfully. That's Nas al-Hadith. That comes in Hadith. If you wake up in the morning, you forget you're fasting, and you went and made yourself a breakfast, And you sat there and you're eating and you're eating and you're eating and you ate. And then you realise I'm meant to be fasting. Alhamdulillah. Enjoy it while it lasted. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا أَطْعَمَكَ رَبُّكَ وَسَقَاكَ. It was your Lord who gave you that to eat and drink. That's a rahmah. Forgetfulness is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes you to forget. So He's made you forget. He wanted you to eat that, just to make it easy for you. But the moment you remember, stop. The moment if you're eating and you remember, don't carry on, stop at that point. In addition, if you see somebody who's eating and you know he's meant to be fasting, and you know he's just forgotten, should you tell him that if he's old, leave him? If he's young, tell him. If he's old, let him have the food. Let him out, he needs the food. If he's young, he doesn't need the food, tell him to stop eating. So eating, drinking or sexual intercourse forgetfully does not break the fast. Accidental breaks the fast, forgetfulness doesn't. The distinction, what's the distinction? Forgetfulness, it's gone out of your mind. You have no recollection that you're fasting. Whereas that's forgetfulness. Accidental, you know you're fasting but you couldn't control. You know you're fasting, you couldn't control. Eating anything between the teeth less than the size of a chickpea. Less than the size of a chickpea. You had a big sahur and you got little bits like stuck away in your teeth, or you're saving some for a rainy day in your mouth. So, you got a camel home there, stored away in your mouth because you know it's an 18-hour one, so I need to space it out. As long as small little bits, then you're okay. The moment it gets more than the size of a chickpea, you're not okay. That's all if it's inside your mouth. Anything from outside of the mouth, large or small, breaks your fast. Food you put into your mouth. Putting it into your mouth does not break. It's going down your throat that breaks. Put it into your mouth, you realise I'm fasting, spit it out, you're fine. Goes down your throat, then you're not fine. Anything from outside, you must be careful of raindrops. It's raining, you're walking, and it's blowing in your face, close your mouth. If the raindrops go down your throat, you've broken your fast. Close your mouth at that point. Involuntary vomiting or induced vomiting less than a mouthful. I'm going to stress this point here now, because too many people come up to me and say we were told vomiting breaks the fast. Vomiting does not break the fast. Vomiting does not break the fast. Nobody says vomiting breaks the fast, except for some people who told you. That's a common error, widespread thing that people are getting told vomiting breaks your fast. Involuntary vomiting, you were sick, you had a big sahur, and it wasn't good food for you, and it came up. And somebody mentioned it, in Warrington mentioned this yesterday, people suffer from reflux where they can't keep the food down. They bring the food out, doesn't break the fast. So they had the sahur, it could be 2-3 hours later and it comes up again, doesn't break the fast. When a person vomits, little bits go back down, doesn't break the fast. None of that breaks the fast. Somebody feels sick after sahur and it's not coming up and he induces it. That will break the fast if a large amount comes out. That's the only point where it breaks the fast. Inducing vomiting less than a mouthful, small amount comes out, doesn't break the fast. You induce the vomit and a large amount comes out, it breaks the fast. Having a wet dream does not break the fast. If you're fasting in Ramadan, daytime you go to sleep, and a wet dream does not break the fast. Likewise, if a man and woman, husband and wife, have marital relations, and it's during the night time, as the Prophet ﷺ did to Sayyidah Aisha mentioned, it came to Fajr, and it's Fajr time, it's daytime, it's Ramadan, and he takes a ghusl and prays. What does that tell you? It's gone into Fajr time, he hadn't done his ghusl, it didn't break his fast. Inhaling unavoidable particles in the air. There's particles always around in the air. Some of them may be more... You're waving at the back? Some of them... There's always particles around in the air. Dust particles, for example. That does not break your fast, inhaling that. Could be that you're cleaning around the house. Doesn't break your fast if you inhale the particles. Where the particles are significant and it's avoidable and you inhale that's when you break the fast. Significant particles in the air that are avoidable and you inhale that, breaks the fast. Examples of that: smoke. Somebody's smoking, passive smoking. You're by somebody smoking and you inhale that and you don't need to be there. You've broken your fast. If it was unavoidable, you're in a room with people who are smoking, it doesn't really apply now, because even now at work in offices there's a ban on smoking. You can't smoke indoors, so it shouldn't really apply. But it could be that you're leaving and somebody's smoking there and you couldn't avoid it. It doesn't break your fast. The other one, bakhur, incense. Inhaling that breaks your fast. Inhaling bakhur, incense, breaks your fast. I mentioned a few years back, I was going to a gathering, Mawlid gathering in Preston, whilst fasting. Alhamdulillah, we're going. So what's happening? So we're going to read a Mawlid, fine, Alhamdulillah. So what are you doing? So we got the incense. I said, no, you're not. Put it out. He said, we were told it was fine. The books of Fiqh state it breaks your fast. Inhaling incense breaks your fast. So no bakhur, no incense whilst fasting, because that's significant. That's significant particles in the air. The other one as well, sprays that you use for yourself, like deodorants, aftershaves, don't use them whilst you're fasting, unless you seal your mouth whilst you're using it. And your nose as well, just make sure nothing goes through. You seal your mouth and nose and spray as much as you want. But other than that, then you can't. No questions. We need to run through this. At the end, if the organisers at the back allow us, then they're waving at the back already. At the end, if there's any time at the end, I will. Bleeding does not break the fast. A common question. I've cut myself. Bleeding breaks your wudu, not your fast. Bleeding breaks your wudu. It does not break your fast. You can give blood whilst you're fasting. It may be that you need to go to doctors and they need to do some tests on your blood. Fine, give it. Hijama, blood cupping, doesn't break your fast. What you've got to be careful though is mouth bleed. Bleeding doesn't break the fast, but swallowing blood breaks the fast. Because you said consuming anything will break the fast, and blood is something. So swallowing blood will break the fast. If some people have weak gums and they may wake up and they may notice some blood there, say, when does it break? So you can taste it. When you swallow, you can taste it in the saliva, or when you spit out the saliva, it's a reddy colour. There's a lot of blood in your mouth. At that point, it breaks if you swallowed that. But if you spat it out, and it was yellowy colour, there was a mixture of saliva, but it wasn't that much. There was blood there, but it wasn't that much because it was yellow in colour. And you swallowed that, you didn't taste anything, and your fast is okay. Injecting into the body. Any injections into the body, not through the passages, into the body. If it goes direct into the mouth or the nose or any other passage, they'll break. But into the arm, into the thighs, into the stomach, any injection, even if it's medicinal, and that's the assumption, or even if it's nutritious, even if it's food being taken, that person can't eat, so he has a drip feed that takes it in, doesn't break the fast. So any injection into the body does not break the fast. A couple of weeks ago, one of the strangest questions I ever got asked, and I'm not going to answer it, but I'll mention it because it's one of the strangest questions ever. Can you inject heroin whilst fasting? So now what's the answer? As long as you don't get stoned, right? Can you inject heroin whilst you're fasting? No. He said no. That's the answer. So those don't break the fast. The following acts are makruh. Try and avoid these acts. Makruh here means try and avoid them, but it doesn't break your fast if you did this. To taste something. Tasting here, you put it onto your tongue. Taste buds on the tongue. You put it onto the tongue, spit it out. It's makruh to do that, but it doesn't break the fast. Unless, when is it not makruh? The woman's cooking, and the husband's going to give her a hard time if the food's not good. Either for himself or for the guest coming. She knows she's going to have a hard time. So there they'll say, taste it, put it on the tongue, spit it out after she's checked it's okay. And there's no blame. The blame's on the husband for making her do that. In that case, tasting acceptable. Chewing, putting something in your mouth and chewing it, as long as you don't swallow, does not break the fast. As long as you don't swallow, it does not break the fast. No. The example of chewing that they mentioned, which is acceptable, somebody has a young child who's starting to eat solid, but it needs to be chewed down for him to eat, and there's nobody who's not fasting there. Like, it could be a woman who's not praying. She's there, then she should do it. But there's nobody available, then that person, the father or the mother, can chew it, break it down for them. As long as they don't swallow, as long as they wash their mouth out immediately so no bits go down, they can do that. Other than that, chewing is is makruh. Kissing or having sexual contact with the wife of ejaculation, sexual intercourse is fear. And you said it's broken if those acts take place, but just physical contact, even with desire, doesn't break, but it's better to avoid. Doesn't break, but it's better to avoid. The following acts are not makruh. Using miswak at any time during the day, it's recommended. Immediately after, all the way up until just before Maghrib throughout the day, it's recommended to use miswak. There's no problem. Be careful that you don't swallow bits. Be careful. The natural taste of miswak is not a problem. Miswak has a natural taste, but that's not a problem. You don't need to worry about that. You can use a toothbrush. Toothpaste, better not to use. You're commonly told toothpaste breaks the fast. It doesn't break the fast. Toothpaste does not break the fast. But if you're brushing your teeth, there's a possibility you may swallow. That would break the fast if you do swallow. So the toothpaste itself doesn't break. But you're putting something, two issues with it. Once it's got to taste. One, it's got to taste. Second, you put it into your mouth and you may well swallow. Another thing similar to that is mouthwash. Can you use mouthwash whilst fasting? You can. You can. You've got to be careful you don't swallow. It's makruh, safer to avoid it. But it doesn't break unless you swallow it. It doesn't break. So you are going to use toothpaste and you brush your teeth and then you wash your mouth thoroughly. After that, you've not broken your fast. Rinsing the mouth and nose is acceptable whilst fasting. Again, be careful you don't take it back. You don't need to dry your mouth out after when you do wudu and you wash your mouth. You don't need to dry your mouth out. There's always going to be little drops left in your mouth. There's no problem with that. The little drops that remain behind. Taking a shower is fine. Again, just be careful that you don't. The reason why they mention that, because it may seem strange, but the reason why they say if it's a long, hot day, Abu Hanifa originally considered to be makruh. Originally considered makruh to take a shower whilst fasting. He said because it's a long day and it's hard and you may want to cool down and make it easy for you. He said you shouldn't try and display some type of weakness within your worship. But then he said it makes it easy for him, so there's no harm. And using scent, as long as it's not a spray, put it directly onto your skin. There's no harm with that, it's fine. The Prophet ﷺ did that whilst he was fasting. The following acts are recommended. Suhoor is recommended. It's always good to have something, however small or large. Be careful with the timing. But another common error, if you don't have anything, you can still fast. It's not a condition. If you didn't eat anything and you woke up and I can't fast now because I didn't eat anything, all you need is intention. All you need is intention. And then when you do your iftar, try and keep it small. No parties, no samosa, no pakora, none of that. Sorry about that. I know blasphemous talk at the beginning, wasn't it? The parties are at Eid, they're not every single night. But when you do break the fast, try and eat something small. Try and have the sunnahs to have dates, something sweet, water. Try not to have a full meal immediately. There are two sunnahs which you should try and do straight away. The sunnah is to break your fast straight away. The sunnah is to pray your maghrib straight away. So don't be sitting there half an hour munching away and then it's Ramadan and still got to pray as well. Don't forget your prayer as well. Those are some of the rules of fasting. No time for question, right? Bismillah. No time for question. Alhamdulillah.